Hey everyone, and welcome to Grammar Weekly. This is where I answer those common grammar questions. This week's topic is thesis statements, part 2. So, in the last video, I discussed how to write a 3-part thesis statement. This basic form is meant for beginners. If you want to see that video, the link is in the description below. In this video, I will cover how to write more advanced thesis statements. These are the ones you will use in your higher level English classes in high school as well as in college. So, as a reminder, a thesis statement is the main idea of your paper, and you want to make sure it's a strong statement. What I will do is show a thesis statement from one of my papers and break down how I got to this point. The thesis that I have is from my American folklore class where I wrote on fairy tales, my favorite subject. Here it is. Due to the exposure to fairy tales at a young age, children are conditioned to adopt preconceived notions concerning gender roles and stereotypes. So, based on my thesis, you can tell that my paper is about gender roles and stereotypes in fairy tales. I will specifically be looking at how fairy tales condition children. And yes, I know that some people would disagree with this statement. However, if your thesis is not arguing something that people may disagree on, then that is not a good thesis. Moving on, the first step that I took before writing my thesis was choosing the topic. I knew I wanted to write on fairy tales, but I did not know what direction I wanted to take. However, after looking over notes, I saw that we discussed how fairy tales are used to teach specific lessons to children. This is a good starting point, but the topic is still too broad because there are multiple lessons in fairy tales to limit to just 10 pages. From here, I decided to focus on gender roles and stereotypes because it was a topic I was learning about in another class. Once I had narrowed it to this point, I made the decision to use Cinderella and Snow White as my examples because of how prominent these stories are. Since I plan to talk about multiple fairy tales, I did not specifically list one in my thesis. However, if I had decided to just focus on Cinderella, I would have changed the wording to include the name of that fairy tale. The main thing you want to make sure of is to make it specific to your paper, but don't list out every point you will address. The thesis that I have directs me on a certain path, but it gives me flexibility for deciding what points I will address. In the first video where we discussed a 3-point thesis, you're locked into talking about those 3 specific points. This is extremely important once you get to papers that are not 5 paragraphs. Many of the papers that I have had to write are over 10 pages, and this format helps avoid just sticking with 3 main points. It will also help you write those higher page papers. The piece of advice I want to leave you with is that a thesis statement can always change. I write my thesis first so that I can get an idea of what I will discuss, but I am always making changes to it until the last moment, and that is perfectly fine. If your body paragraphs have been edited and changed, so should your thesis. So, that's this week's lesson. I hope I managed to answer any questions you might have had. If there are any topics you would like for me to cover, just let me know in the comment section below. Bye!